Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, and welcome to the second segment of our Module 2 on Trade Facilitation Agreement. Great to have you all back with us, and as well our trainers from Market Access Division. I just wanted to mention that this session we've reserved 2 hours, so it will be running from 14 hours to 16 hours, that is 2 to 4 p.m. in Geneva time. And will be guided by the exercise that you have received previously regarding the TFA website. I will now give the floor to Helen and Mark Henderson, who is joining us for this afternoon session. And I just wanted to let you know that at the very end of the session, I will say a few words about next week, our Module 3 in week 3 of this course. So have a great, useful session, and see you later when the TFA module is finished and I have a moment to introduce Module 3. Thank you. Helen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alicia, and hello, everyone. I hope that you are keeping safe on this Friday. Based on some of your questions last week regarding technical assistance, I had a discussion with my colleague, Mark Henderson, from the TFA facility, and we thought that it would be perhaps a good idea to share with you some of the technical assistance that the facility provides for the implementation of the TFA. So, Mark, if you're there, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Helen. Good day to everybody. It's a privilege to be speaking to you all. I'd like to again thank Helen for the opportunity to speak and introduce the information that I'm going to share with you. As explained in the introduction, I work for the Trade Facilitation Agreement Facility at the WTO, and ours is a program which was established by the Director General alongside some of the groups at the WTO to assist developing and least developed country members to find the support they need to implement the Trade Facilitation Agreement. It's, as you've no doubt been discussing, in its structure, quite a unique agreement, and had some very novel elements when it was introduced, and so it was understood that to unlock the implementation of such an agreement, it was helpful to have a team of people, a facility within the WTO who could provide said assistance. Now, I'd like to show you, if I could, the 2 main channels through which we can provide assistance. I would say that first and foremost, we're always here on a kind of informal and personal level to be contacted to discuss anything that might be necessary to give advice and to help. So that's probably the primary channel through which we would engage with you, with members, in order to help however we can. But the 2 main more formal routes that we have are through the organization of activities, workshops, seminars, conferences. Of course, at the moment in the remote format that we're all very used to, sadly, but hopefully not too long into the future, also back in person again. So we can organize activities on specific elements of the agreement to explain how they function, and there we would draw on the expertise necessary. Helen and colleagues that serve the TF committee, other experts, be they at the national level, at the regional level, in our implementation partners, the World Customs Organization, the World Bank, UNCTAD, the International Trade Center, and others. So we would organize events and bring together the expertise based on the needs that were expressed to us. And the way to request such an activity is through our website that hopefully you can see on screen at the moment. Could somebody give me a nod to let me know, yes, that it's sharing okay? Good, I can see Helen helpfully indicating there. So our web address is tfafacility.org. Very simple. I'll drop that into the chat for you all. But on the website, there is a whole host of information about the facility itself, about the agreement and specific articles, about the process of notification and ratification, a large contact database, the members themselves, the implementation partners that I spoke of, a large resource library on the agreement and associated materials. But here along the top on the 5th tab is how you can engage our assistants directly. And that first option there is to request an activity. So those workshops, seminars, whatever format is necessary that I was describing to you, can be requested through this simple form here. And as I'm scrolling down, you can see there's really not much information needed. I'll give you a quick guidance through it, but I just wanted to scroll down so you can see it's a very short form. It doesn't require a lot of information. So to request an activity, you first of all need to identify which WTO member or grouping of members, regional grouping or the LDC group, for example, you're requesting on behalf of. We then need a contact person, of course, to make the arrangements for the event in question. So you leave your contact details there. We want to know some details such as whether you have an operational National Trade Facilitation Committee. It's not obligatory to request an activity, but it helps us understand how to pitch the level necessary for the information in question. And then into the detail of the activity requested. If you have specific dates that you would like to request, or simply a window, a kind of range of dates in which you would like it to be organized. You select the working language of the WTO in which you would like the activity to be delivered. And then an objective of the activity. And these are very broad. So ratification of the agreement, if you haven't already done so, preparation of TFA notifications, enhance the operation of the TF committees, or find assistance for implementation of the provisions. As I say, they're very broad aims. You're very welcome to select any of those, and then we can have a discussion to narrow it down if necessary. Provide a description of what kind of help you're looking for, an idea of the agencies involved, so that we on our side, for example, if you have, Ministry of Agriculture, for example, we can ensure that they have experts on our side who are able to speak to the relevant aspects of the agreement. An idea of the level of knowledge, again, for us to pitch the content of the activity, some idea of the number of participants, and then to try and identify some of the risks that might make it difficult to achieve the outcome that you want. And that's all of the information that you need. When you complete this form, there's some additional questions down here. If you can answer, great. If not, that's also fine. When you submit the form, we receive that information in an email format, and then immediately we would reach out to you and begin the process of organizing an activity according to your needs. So what I do want to say about this form is that if you are able to complete it, excellent. If you don't really have all the answers at your fingertips, please just reach out to us directly. Just contact me by email or by telephone. Share the coordinates later, I'm sure. And we can complete this process together. This is not meant to be a barrier to you engaging with our assistants by any means. And it's quite normal for me to fill in the form during a discussion with you. So you can either complete it yourself or we can do it together. The second element that I wanted to quickly introduce to you that we have available for assistance is our grant program. The grant program exists to help members with the implementation of their Category C needs when they cannot find assistance elsewhere. And that's a key element to it. It was agreed in the rules for our grant program that to avoid the duplication or competition with the many other providers of assistance who are out there, that there would be that element of kind of safety net. If you can't find help elsewhere, we are very happy to step in and help. And again, the process is launched on this 5th tab on our website. You click on the grant program, and this page provides you with all of the information that you need to apply for a grant. The first stage of the process is an expression of interest. You share your needs, you identify the articles of the agreement that you've designated under Category C and that you need assistance for. And then we, on your behalf, send an email to about 70 to 80 donor and development partner representatives and say, can you help with this issue? Or are you happy for the TFA facility to? Depending on the complexity of the request, within 2 to 4 weeks, if we receive no response, we move forward. So again, it's just that simple kind of light touch attempt to check. Is somebody else out there better placed to help you, or can we? From the expression of interest, we move to a project proposal grant where we would engage an expert to work with you directly to articulate your needs in the terms of a development project. So putting it not from the technical customs procedures TFA language, but into the language of an aid for trade project that a donor or development partner could quickly pick up and turn into the implementation assistance that you need. Again, if after that project proposal grant stage, that short-term intervention with an expert, you cannot find assistance elsewhere, that hasn't unlocked what you need, then the TFA facility has an implementation grant at the next level, which is a little bit more money available to engage the expertise needed to help you actually implement the article in question, to write the standard operating procedures, to help draft the legislation, to suggest the best practice procedures that are in place elsewhere in the world that would be applicable in your scenario. So that's a very quick overview of the grant program, those 3 steps there. But all of this information is, as I say, available on our website here on the grant program page. I would first of all direct you to the FAQs, the frequently asked questions here. This provides a very straightforward overview of what I've tried to explain to you in a short period of time there, alongside, of course, some of the frequently asked questions there. On this page, you can also apply directly for a grant, and it's a similar kind of length of form to the one that we've just looked at for the activity request. And again, exactly the same principles apply. You can go through this application form yourself and apply directly, or you can contact us, the TFAF team, and we will go through that with you and undertake the application. So in all cases, please don't ever be held back or kind of intimidated by the questions necessary to activate our assistance. We're here and very happy to help. I was asked only to make a short intervention, and I've already overrun my time, so I apologize to Helen for that. But I think I've given you a quick and brief overview of the information that I wanted to. I've put into the chat there the web address. I see Helen's already done that. Thank you. To more efficient than I am, and my email address is there. If now is the appropriate time, Helen, let me know. I'm very welcome to answer any immediate questions that you have. But if not, I would certainly recommend that you get in contact with me by email. Either we are able to provide the assistance that you need directly, or we call upon the broad range of partners that we work with, and we draw on their expertise to match you up with what is needed. But we're here and very happy to work with you. So thank you once again for the opportunity and privilege to speak to you all. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was wonderful, very concise and to the point. I think that some colleagues here were very interested in that kind of information. Of course, questions are welcome if you have them, either through the chat or if you'd like to take the floor for Mark. They are certainly welcome. Before this question that has just appeared on the chat, I had one, whether acceding governments had access to this type of technical assistance, Mark. I wonder if you have an answer to that.
Certainly, yes. That's a very good question. Yes, we do have assistance, and we have a history of working with acceding governments. There are elements of the grant program that observers of the WTO are not eligible to apply to, but we can use that expression of interest tool of the grant program to try and matchmake your needs with the available assistance. And aside from the grant program, the other wide range of help that we can provide is absolutely open to acceding governments. So yes.
Thanks, Mark, for that. I hope that has answered the question. If anyone else had any other questions for Mark right now, otherwise you have our emails, and we'd be happy to get in touch with you if you have any further questions. I believe that the question on the chat box, perhaps our colleagues in ITTC can address it afterwards. Here we have a question, Mark, on the chat. What are the options for where the donors are not yet identified, I presume, if you'd like to answer that?
Certainly, yes. I think that situation where a donor is not yet identified is probably where we as the facility can add the most value, specifically the grant program. In any scenario, I would very wholeheartedly recommend you to work with us together to undertake the expression of interest process. It's very, very light touch. It takes no more than kind of 20 minutes, half an hour for us to gather together the information necessary to launch that. And with that, we can circulate the needs. In 75% of the cases that we circulate the expression of interest, a donor will step forward and say, we can help, no problem. But for those that don't, we progressively move on to more and more levels of assistance. So we can help certainly where a donor is not yet identified. But if in doubt, please, let's do an expression of interest. It costs nothing. The time involved is low, and the results that we've seen are very positive.
Thanks for that, Mark. I wonder if there are any other questions. If there are no questions at the moment. I think that we take your message, Mark, that, you know, here in the Secretariat, we are, of course, willing and stand ready to assist anyone that reaches out to us, and to not hesitate in case there are any questions that they may have. We stand here ready to help. So thank you so much for the time you've dedicated today. I think that based on the questions that we received last time, this information on technical assistance was certainly beneficial. So thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and privilege to speak to you all. Thanks a lot. Thanks for asking, Helen.
Of course. So with that, maybe we can go into the exercise for today. Certainly the exercise, I hope that it can be an interactive session. I am looking at the chat, and you are, of course, welcome to take the floor if you'd like to share a bit of your experience. Last time I asked if there was anyone from the National Trade Facilitation Committees, any TF contact point that would like to share with us their national experience. So I was wondering if anyone wanted to do that before starting with the exercise, and if not, then there's no problem at all. We can proceed. All right, seeing that there are no volunteers at the moment, let's go into the exercise. So I hope that you got a chance to take a look at the Trade Facilitation Agreement database. This is a database that contains all of the information that is provided to the TF committee by members through their notifications. And something that WTO members constantly share is the fact that the notifications contain a wealth of information, but sometimes, you know, they are not easily read or accessible or even visibly attractive. Of course, they are legal documents. However, this database has been designed at the request of members to process all of that information that is contained in notifications coming from the TFA. As you know, and as we have discussed, notifications are the true backbone of this committee and of implementation of the agreement. So it's very important for members to keep track not only of whether the notifications have been submitted, but also of what information is contained in the notifications. My colleague Maria, who unfortunately cannot be with us today, but she does a wonderful job at keeping this database up to date with whatever members are paying attention to. Let's say, you know, in this 5 years, the attention has certainly shifted from a certain type of notifications to others, and even, you know, type of information that is processed in one way or another. So we try to deliver as much as we can by attending to members' needs of information through this database. And so the objective of this exercise is that you get to know the database, you get to know what kind of information is there, where to find it, and perhaps and hopefully it will be useful to you. So I will be going through the questions in the exercise. If you encountered any difficulties in responding to any of these questions, or if something catches your attention from the WTO member that you're looking at, you are certainly welcome to engage with us through the chat. I would hope that that's how this session goes. So let's start. I have here the database homepage, And the first instruction was that you would go into the WTO members tab, and you would select a WTO member, whether of your interest or the WTO member that you represent, and go to the member profile. So let me pick a WTO member here, any member, let's say Barbados. Okay, so I am in the Barbados profile, and you will see that this profile contains summarized information from the notifications presented by Barbados to the TF committee. So it contains rates of implementation, implementation plans, types of notifications submitted, information on the transparency notifications, whether they have been submitted or not, a summary of the status of notifications, what they have submitted, what they have not submitted, what is due and what is not due. This is a summary. And then you can go into the notifications themselves. So this is just an overview of a profile. And let's go into the first questions. I'm going to go to the top. So the first question is, what is the current rate of implementation commitments? So that would be, if we look at the first graph here, we have the status of implementation commitments. And what that entails is category A provisions, which is, you recall, are those that were to be implemented at entry into force. And those category B and C provisions with expired definitive dates, right? So that would give us an idea of what a member has notified to the committee that they are implementing at this moment. So in the case of Barbados here, we have in green what they notified in category A, which is around 32% of the provisions in section A. And then we have a solid blue bar indicating category B commitments with definitive dates that have already expired, indicating that they notified that they would be implementing this provision by a date that has already taken place. And then what we have in the shaded bars is the category B and C provisions that are to be implemented in the future, right? So as you can see, no category C provision has already been implemented. There's no solid red, but there's only shaded. And I can see St. Kitts that their implementation commitments is at 83.2%, which is quite higher, let's say, in comparison to Barbados. Not better, not worse, but just objectively. And then you can also look at it by time frame. So if you'd like to see, for example, how Barbados's implementation is going to go forward, then you can see that starting, I believe, in year 2024, category C implementation commitments will start kicking in, and you can see full implementation perhaps towards 2029 here. I see in the chat, thank you for your clarification on technical assistance to be provided by WTO to the LDCs. You're much welcome, and please contact Mark or myself or Dolores, and we'd be happy to continue to assist you. And then just going back to the exercise here, I think that some key statistics or way of looking at this is, for example, what are the implementation commitments today as of 25th February? And there's a figure there of 44.5%, of which 33 is from provisions that were designated in category A, 11.3% from category B, but no from category C, as we can, of course, see from the chart. And you can see upcoming dates of implementation. So you can see, for example, if Barbados is due to implement provisions in the next 2 years. So in the next 2 years, according to their notifications, they will reach 67.2% of implementation commitment. And you can see what is coming from category B and what is coming from category C. And there you can see a breakdown per period of time of when a certain commitment will be implemented. I have a question. That was not our next question. Do we have different questions to the answer? I'm sorry, I'm looking at question 3. What is the current rate of implementation commitments? That's where I am right now. If I'm not making myself clear, please let me know. And I'm just looking at question number 3, implementation commitments. Okay, and then you can see a full implementation commitment schedule here. You can see it for every provision. So if you wanted to get all of the information on how this member is to implement the agreement, this is a full picture of it. Please do feel free to chat or to raise your hand. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So these are for implementation commitments. I'm moving on to question number 4 now. If provisions have been notified in category C, what is the type of technical assistance that has been most notified? So let's continue looking at this member, or St. Kitts and Nevis. Okay, let's look at St. Kitts by request of the audience. So if we look at St. Kitts, one way to reach this answer is you go to the measures here notified in category C. You click on view. You have an analysis of the provisions that have been notified as category C. And towards the bottom, you will see the graph. That here, what they have notified the most is that they need assistance with legislative and regulatory framework, followed by institutional procedures, human resources and training, and so on. So this is just a broad categorization of technical assistance needs. If you'd like a more detailed view, you can certainly go to the notification itself. And we are consistently making efforts to make this a little bit more clear. So I'm looking at the chat box. Yes, legislative and regulatory framework was the most notified. Question, who determines the future implementation, especially category B and C? If you recall from last session, the schedules of implementation are completely self-designated. So each member will determine when they will implement a provision. However, they were required to let the committee know through a notification when they were committing themselves to do that. And again, if you recall, there were 2 steps to that. First, a member indicated an indicative date, a date that they foresaw, when they could implement a certain provision. And at a second stage, members were required to notify definitive dates. So having, conducted intermediary assessments, then they were to provide a final date for implementation. So that period is absolutely and completely self-designated. The only requirement is that it is notified to the committee. I hope that answers your questions. If not, then I'm happy to go back through it again. I see that for Egypt, the main category requested is capacity building. Let me go to the chat here. For Egypt, there's capacity building. As for Turkey, the rate of implementation commitments is 100%. For Ecuador is information and communication technologies. I have a question. On average, what types of technical assistance are requested the most? We can look at it on the database. And for Egypt, it is December 2030. I assume that that would be the full implementation, perhaps, or the definitive dates.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So if we go to the menu here, I'm looking at notification. And if we go to technical assistance needs, here we can find more information on technical assistance needs for all members. So you can certainly have a look here at what has been notified. Let me see if there is something that would summarize all technical assistance needs, and I think I have reached exactly. So just guiding you back, I went to notifications and I went to visual analytics. And then I went to the bottom. And here is a summary of, on average, what is the most, what is the type of technical assistance that is requested the most. So the most on average is human resources and training, followed by legislative and regulatory frameworks, ICT, and so on. So this is on average, and if you wanted to view more, I think it'll take you where I was. And then you can, oh, a different page, great. So then you can filter it by measure. So technical assistance requested for inquiry points, let's say. And you can filter that, then it'll give you what you need. Or if you wanted to look at it, what is the technical assistance that Western Africa requests the most? You can do that filter too. You can group it by LDCs, developing members, and LLDCs, or community, for example, and you can perform a series of filters here on technical assistance. Let me go back to the chat. Is it possible, let me go back here. Is it possible for a member to change the definitive rate of implementation? If it is possible, how many times could that change take place? Okay, so let's go back to our session and think about Article 17. So if we go back to Article 17, it states that, members have a procedure to follow if they foresee that they cannot implement a provision by the definitive date that they have notified, right? So again, the procedure is to present a notification to the committee. In the case of developing countries, 120 days before the expiration of that definitive date, and 90 days before in the case of LDCs. So you have to submit a request. So as to further request, let me just go to the language exactly of Article 17, which basically says that there can be subsequent requests. However, the first one, and if it's less than 180 days, it will be granted automatically by the committee. However, if it's a subsequent request or it exceeds 180 days, then the committee might have a discussion and either approve or not approve that notification. I hope that that answers your question. I think that there are more questions here. For the Philippines, the single window has been notified. And then Malaysia's rate of implementation commitment is 100%. And almost all our major trading partners also have 100%. Okay, so I believe we are good with that. Okay, let's move on. If provisions have been notified under category C, has a notification been made on the arrangements or progress of technical assistance? And if you recall from our discussion in the last session, this is where members have a bit of a lower rate of complying with this notification requirement. And so let's choose a WTO member, any member, not pointing any fingers, of course, but let's say Honduras. So how do we find that out? And one way of finding it out is through the summary of notifications. The last two you will see are whether Honduras has notified arrangements on the provision of technical assistance support, or whether it has notified progress. These are the due dates, and Honduras has not notified. So this is where Dolores and I were pointing out that the committee doesn't know if, for example, this member has just not submitted a notification, or is it that it has not been able to arrange for technical assistance for their category C provisions. And this is important because donors need to know where the gaps exist and where the gaps are present. So right now, because there are no notifications, donors do not know, whether there is a good job or not. So this is important. We're going to look at a member that has notified. Then let's look at the chat. For St. Kitts and Nevis, I did not quite understand question 5 as relation to progress and for technical assistance. Okay, and then I have another question. Thanks, got it. I did not have any answer for St. Kitts and Nevis. We'll search for it. Okay, so basically, Julian, correct me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but according to Article 16, members are to notify to the committee the arrangements that they have entered to for technical assistance for the implementation of Category C provisions and any progress that has been made. So that is a notification requirement according to Article 16. And here is where the committee is finding that there is a gap in information, and perhaps, efforts could be made to present these notifications. And perhaps, for example, one thing that you could do is if you go to notification, the notification tab, and you go to technical assistance and progress, perhaps what you could do is look at a member that has notified. So, for example, I can see that Bangladesh here has notified both arrangements and progress. So if I were to try to find that notification, I can go to the bottom and see arrangements and progress in the provision of technical assistance and capacity building support. And this is a revision. So let's look at the original one just for, I don't think you'll be able to see it. Let's see. Oh, yes, you can. So if I zoom in, perhaps one idea for those of you that have not submitted this information is to look at those members that have, how did they do it, right? What information did they include in their notification? So I'm just using this as an example. Let me close this. Or perhaps also another tool that you might use is in the resources, you have the notification templates, And here you can download the template to notify. Of course, Dolores and myself, we stand ready to assist you. If you'd like to present any of the notifications and you don't know how to go about it, our great team, Maria, Dolores, and myself, we can certainly engage with you. Now, about the repercussions of rejected extension applications. Now, the committee held extensive consultations last year about how to work with Article 17, because many notifications were coming in this regard. So if you look at the annual report for the Committee on Trade Facilitation for 2021, what you will see, and the language that the committee has used as, there was no agreement on how to proceed with these notifications, right? So they were not approved, but so far the committee has not made any further decisions. What the committee did do is to try to prevent this situation in the future and try to assist members in trying to prevent this situation in the future. And one of the ways that it's doing so is through the GTFA F1 Rev 1 document that I believe you all have as well. So that will give you, for each member, what are the provisions that are to be implemented in the next 2 years. So if you need to trigger Article 17, now you can look at those provisions and say, this is what I got coming in the next 2 years. Will I need Article 17? And then you can look at the definitive dates and look at the procedural requirements of Article 17, those 120 and 90 days, and then, submit notifications accordingly to that deadline and see if you can extend that definitive date. So all I can say is no agreement so far. Take a look at the annual report. That's what the committee said about them. But overall, the message is try to present your notifications on time. Great questions, great session. Very much enjoying it. I hope that you are, and I'm not boring you to death. But let's keep it going. So, question 6. In line with the decision from the first review of the TFA to hold meetings in Capital with donors to review progress on technical assistance, who would you contact? Would it be to arrange technical assistance, or would it be to review the progress? How would you find their contact points? And what information or notifications would assist you in preparing for such meeting? So we said, great, I'm not boring. Awesome, that's a good encouragement. Thank you so much. I'll keep going then. So let's say that you need this technical assistance, and how do you go about it? So one way of going about it is, if you go to notifications again, and if you look at the donor notifications, these are mandated under Article 22.1 and 22.2 of the TFA. I see there's a raised hand. If you'd like to take the floor, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry for interruption, and I want to thank you very much for this session. Actually, I missed something. I think I'm working on trade remedies. Okay, so as you know, on WTO, each member should provide a semi-annual report concerning the measure and concerning everything relating to this, what happened related to trade remedies on 6 months. So what I understood from your session, that there is no such on TFA, it's just the progress of every 2 years, or because I wonder the states of implementation commitments of Egypt, which ratified on 24th of June 2019, it's just 23.1. Okay. And there is no donor identified until now. So how the progress is going? And thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much for your question. I understand. So the TFA requires you to notify in advance when are you going to do things in the future. Correct? So when first, remember the 2 stages. First, through indicative dates, you were to notify when you thought you could, when you had perhaps assessed that you could. And then at a second stage, you are to provide definitive dates, which are the dates by which you commit yourself or as a member to implement these provisions of the TFA. Now, this database only shows those commitments that members have made to implement XYZ provision by this date. That's what this database shows. Now, if you're telling me Egypt has a 23% rate of implementation and there are no donors, my next question would be, do they have category C provisions? So let's look at Egypt for a little while here to answer your question. So certainly we have that 23% that you mentioned, which is coming only from category A provisions, as you can see, and all of it. Yes, please go ahead.
No, I just want to tell you that I searched for this, and it's all category A, 23. The category B and category C is 0%.
Exactly. And also what you have, and you can see here, is that 74% is coming from category C. So, right, most of the implementation is going to come from category C. And I see from your intervention that no arrangements and no progress has been notified. So again, the committee doesn't know. Members don't know if, for example, Egypt has not arranged for any technical assistance or there is no notification. Another question that would rise for me is the time frame. So here is perhaps the answer to your question. Category C commitments will not kick in until 2026. So perhaps, and I am here, of course, making a huge assumption, perhaps there is still time to arrange for that technical assistance for category C provisions. You know, perhaps we're not at that stage yet, and it's only for the member to determine whether, you know, so many years in advance, it is you know, appropriate to negotiate that technical assistance now, or is it appropriate to do it closer to the implementation date? That could be one thing. Another thing to evaluate is, you know, if we have given ourselves some more time, perhaps we could think about implementing sooner. There are many options here, but all I can see from this graph to answer your question is that category C commitments are not kicking in until another, you know, couple years. So perhaps there's still some time to make that notification. Perhaps that's a good observation for us to have. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And I'm really happy to join this session. Actually, it's very fruitful information. Thank you very much.
Great. I'm really happy to be here too, and I'm really happy to be answering your questions. I have another message in the chat. The separate customs territory of Tanwai, Pengukimen, and Matsu has 100% of implementation. And we are pretty hardworking on the issues of TFAs, such as the authorized economic operator. That's great to hear. Compared with my government's good performance, I personally have some problem with the TFA. Hope I can raise my questions later, certainly. And if there's anything that from the WTO Secretariat we can answer from the database, I'm here. So we were on contact points. Let me go back to the contact points. So I was saying, so donor notifications, remember, notification, donor notifications. And Article 22.1 of the TFA mandates that donors notify their assistance programs and how much they're committing to disburse, and how much they have disbursed so far. So basically to notify, in quantitative terms, how much they are committing to TFA implementation. And then Article 22.2 requires that they notify what are the procedures in place to reach out to them and request assistance. So let's look at a couple of examples. And here in the database, those that have a tick are those that have notified this information. In the case of the EU countries, of course, you will see that information under the EU. So for example, let's look at Australia. If you'd like to reach out to Australia for assistance in implementation of the TFA, you go again to their member profile. You go to their Article 22.2 notifications, and you will see here that Australia is directing you to the World Bank Trade Facilitation Support Program, to the Global Alliance, and to the TIFA from the WTO. So in this case, perhaps Australia is channeling their funds through certain already existing organizations, and they have a national contact point, and you have emails there to reach out. And for example, if you wanted to look at the European Union, which is fairly popular, you can again go to Article 22.2 notification, and you will see that they direct you to certain organizations, but they also direct you to the delegations of the EU in your countries. So as you recall, one of the recommendations from the review is that you can contact delegations in capital to review your technical assistance and progress. So let's say that you want to contact the EU delegation in Cameroon, you go to their delegation and you find their contact, right? So this is perhaps how you would go about it. So what kind of information would you provide? Would you be interested in arranging? So let's go back to the example of Egypt, right? So perhaps in this case, what we are interested in is in arranging this technical assistance because we don't have it in place right now. So one way to go about it, I'm going to show you, would be to go to these measures notified in category C. And perhaps you can say, print this out. For me, the most useful one, to be honest, would be the category C notification. So if I were to go to Egypt's notification for category C and I download it and open it, for example, I could go to a donor and say, I don't have assistance at the moment. I hope that you can see this on screen. If it's too small, let me know. But let's say the article on publication is on category C. And what I need is training and use of international best practices in relation to publication. Egypt needs infrastructure development for relevant agencies and training of the relevant agency staffs. So recall that in the notification process, members did not only notify the categories, the indicative dates, the definitive dates, but they also notified what they would need to implement. So if you are a member, for example, that does not have technical assistance, and of course you would know this internally much better than from a notification, but from the outside looking in, I can see that for these provisions, this is what you need. Of course, the relevant agencies would know so much more to go to a donor and ask for certain assistance, but at least an overview of what has been notified to the TF committee could be found through the notifications. Are the TA activities financed through grants or loans? Well, that depends on the donor. Really, that depends on the donor, that depends on the organization that you are dealing with. Some do it through grants, some do it through loans. I think, it's very much for the W2 member to decide what is better for them in terms of agreeing with a donor, how they want to proceed. When I go into the donor notifications for my region, nothing seems to appear when I apply. What shall I do? Okay, so remember that donor members are those that designate themselves in the capacity to provide assistance. So those are developed WTO members, but also developing countries that have, the capacity to provide assistance. So I'm wondering if perhaps you are looking at your own WTO member, and perhaps you are a developing nation or an LDC that has not signaled that they are in the capacity of providing assistance. So again, this is the flip side, right? We are looking at donors and what they can provide in terms of assistance. I hope I have answered your questions. If I have not, please let me know through the chat. So, if you wanted to prepare for your meetings, this is how you find contact points. This is how you find at least some information. If you have any other relevant information that you think would assist you, any other way of conducting these meetings, that'd be amazing that you could share with us. Let's go to the next question. Has your WTO member triggered Article 17 or Article 19? And this might perhaps have to do with some of your questions. So I was looking at Egypt, right? And for example, if they would have triggered Article 17 or 19, I would have seen it here. So I'm seeing from St. Kitts. Let's go to St. Kitts and look at your experience. It says, St. Kitts and Nevis triggered Article 17 on 21st September. Let's look at that. Here we have it, right? 5 requests for extensions of time from St. Kitts. And it says, however, we are not listed on the list of the link provided in question 8. Does that mean that we are not approved? Okay, so let's look at some questions here. I don't have INF1 at the moment. Maybe I will open it, because my first way to answer this would be, remember that the INF1 document lets you know what are the upcoming implementation dates in the next 2 years, right? So if I'm looking correctly at St. Kitts and Nevis, you do have certain dates that were requested that are actually to be implemented in 2022 and 2023. So my first guess would be that they should be included in the document. And if they're not, and if that's what I'm reading correctly from your chat, let me check with my colleague Maria what the reason for this is, and I will get back to you specifically, because this is a very interesting question. Let me let me note that. Okay, so great that you're pointing that out. These are things that are very interesting to look at. So we were looking at St. Kitts and we were seeing that they notified the request for an extension and the requests were approved. So we can see here, for example, that the original definitive date of implementation was 31st December 2021, and you can see how much in advance St. Kitts and Nevis decided to request an extension. So here, what you would have to commend is the fact that St. Kitts foresaw that it would have difficulties complying with these dates, and not waiting or close to the deadline of those 120 days. They presented a notification under Article 17 very well in advance. And I think that would make things easier for members, because definitely what makes it hard at the committee is whether those 120 or 90 days have been respected or not. Do you recall, is 120 days before the expiration of a definitive dates for developing countries and 90 days for LDCs. So hopefully the INF1 document, the one in question 8, you can look at what's upcoming for you in the next 2 years, and should you need to trigger any of these articles, you can do it well in advance. So great example from St. Kitts. So we also needed to find if Article 19 had been triggered. And for example, let's look at Belize. So Belize made requests for extensions of time, and it also shifted between categories. Oh, thanks, we were approved. Yes, on St. Kitts, it was approved. Yes, absolutely. If you saw it from the database there that it was approved, then absolutely it was. That's what I was showing in the last screen. So going back to Article 19 and shifts, for example, here we can see for Belize, those measures that were shifted from categories C to B, or from B to C. Or for example, let's look at, these are the kinds of things that happen, in the sense that, for example, Belize shifted this provisions from C to B. It requested one extension to 22 February 2020, which was approved. And there was another request for extension until 31st December 2023 that was not approved by the committee. So, what might have happened? And if you look at the requests made by Belize, I went into the request for extensions. And if you look at what was approved and what was not approved, and then you see that the definitive date, the original one, was 22 August, but the request came on 22 June of that same year, then you can see that it does not comply with the 120 days rule. So you have to be very careful with these deadlines in case you want to trigger these articles, because the committee does pay attention to these procedural requirements. And just to make it clear, it is not the WTO Secretariat by no means that is making any of these decisions. It's absolutely 100% in the hands of WTO members. All right. So we go to the INF document. So let me go search for the INF document, the INF1 document. Sorry, I am using the more informal and shortened version. One way to go about it is you search on all the documents from the committee, and you will be on this page. And for example, this time, what I'm looking is for a WTO Secretariat document, which is the INF1 Rev1 document. So here we go. So if we go here now, I'm curious about the status of St. Kitts, but let me go to St. Kitts. There we go. So we have for St. Kitts that the following measures are, to be implemented in the next 2 years. Julian, if you would be so kind to check that the dates that appear here are the dates that you or your country requested for an extension, then that'd be great, because that means that the INF1 document takes into consideration the extension that was requested, and that's what we're looking for. So if you could confirm that, that'd be great. I see from the chat, in the case of El Salvador, there is one request, but I cannot see the details. One request for Article 17, Laura. Let me get back to that, and to El Salvador. We'll see. So, Julian, yeah, you can confirm it. But basically, in this document, let's read question 8. Sorry, let's go back. Open the document, check for the upcoming implementation dates for your WTO member. If you consider that the application of Article 17 or 19 of the TFA could be appropriate, what are the deadlines to keep in mind to submit a notification to the committee and comply with the procedural requirements set out in each of those 2 articles? Now, do we have any volunteers that have made the calculation of when they would have to submit a notification in case they needed to do so? I can wait through the chat and see if any one of you has any ideas. So another thing to note, while perhaps you make a decision to participate or not, or to calculate, is that this, okay, 2 things. This is the first revision to the INF1 document, right? And it contains the dates for 1st January, the deadlines that are coming from 2022 to 2023. However, if you look at the first document without any revisions, here it is, the original INF. INF is for information. Sorry that I'm using it like that. But if you were to go to the original document, it provides you the dates from 1st May 2021 to 31st December 2022. So if you'd like to, have an idea of what's upcoming this year, then you can go to this document as well, to the original one. So I see 1st September if the implementation date is 31st December. So that would be if you are an LDC, that would be 90 days, correct? September, October, November? Oh no, December. So 4. That would be a developing country. That's correct. Thank you for that contribution. But basically, the exercise, what it would entail you to do is to look at the date, look at what's upcoming. If you think that you won't be able to implement, then calculate backwards. If you're going to use Article 17, then calculate those 120 days backwards, and then, see what needs to be done for your government to present a notification before that date so that you can request the extension. That's what we have for this INF document. So let me go to the question from El Salvador. There is one request, but I cannot see the details. One request for extension of time. and no data. This is interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's see if we can find it in the notifications from El Salvador. I believe that there are no notifications in this regard. So thank you for pointing that out, Laura. I will consult with our database person. It might be that this box does not need to be there, and we will correct that. One last way that I'm going to double check this is if I go to notifications and I go to extension of implementation dates. Let's see if somehow I find El Salvador. But I believe we don't have it here. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. I will check with my database person to correct that from the profile. Thanks a million. Then question, can you please explain the 90 days or the 120 days and when you use each date? Awesome, I can do that. Let me go to I think that this is the text of the TFA. Yes. So let me go to the text of the TFA so you would have it more clearly. And let me go to Article 17. Here we go. And this is the part that is relevant. Developing country members shall notify the committee no later than 120 days before the expiration of the implementation date, and least developed country members shall notify the committee no later than 90 days before such dates. The other, wonder if that answers your questions. And of course, this is pertaining, the request to extend your definitive date for implementation. And then the other period that you need to bear in mind is where a developing country member's request for additional time does not exceed 18 months, or at least, or an LDC, the request does not exceed 3 years, then the requesting member, provided that it has submitted the notification complying with the procedural requirements, it is entitled to such additional time with any further action from the committee. And I believe someone asked me this, like what happens with subsequent extensions? This is paragraph 3. If you need an extension that is longer or a second or any subsequent extension, it shall submit to the committee the notification containing the information in the same periods of time. And the committee, what it shall do is give sympathetic consideration to granting those requests. So I hope that answers. So there we go. It answers your question. It depends on whether it's developing or least developed. Yes, that's what it depends on. Exactly. All right, question 9. How has your country, region, or customs territory categorized the obligations for transparency notifications? Have the notifications been submitted accordingly? And do the links for the notifications work? So let's go back to the database. And let's go to another WTO member, let's say Mexico. So we can see here that Mexico has provided all transparency notifications. We can see that they are all available. So also in the summary of notifications, you can see that Mexico notified their transparency notifications in category A. So let's go back to our session. Remember that we said we have the notifications obligations of these 4 articles, right? There is an obligation to notify certain information to the committee. But if you combine that with the flexibilities from section 2, then if you made use of them, you can take these notification requirements and assign them to a category, say category B or category C, giving you some time to notify. So what you have to do in this case is associate what this member has notified these transparency notifications in which categories, and whether they have complied with that commitment. So let's look at this very simple exercise in which Mexico notified everything in category yes, and indeed it has provided all of the notifications. So category A, remember, is that entry into force. Let's look at another example just for purposes of showing what else could be happening. So let's say, I don't know, Panama. So Panama notified 2 of these articles in category A, and indeed it has provided the notification. It has notified 1 of the provisions in category C with a date of 1st June 2022. So this is not due yet, correct? So that's the reason why Panama has not provided, this information. And there is a notification under category C that was due this January and has not been submitted. This is the notification on single window. So this is, for example, the case of one country that has notified these transparency notifications in different categories. So this is what you have to, this is the association that you have to make here. So let's look again at one of the questions was whether the links work and whether they provide you accurate information. Now, this is, okay, the WTO is conducting an exercise at the request of the committee from the review, as a result of the review, to check transparency notifications for broken links. That means in case we click on a link and it says error 404, this page does not exist, right? So the Secretariat is working with delegations to go through these notifications that have broken links. Now, another layer to this that you can add is whether, trading partners consider that the information is appropriate, is accurate, and is easily accessible. One discussion that has sometimes happened in the committee is that members may say, you have provided the general link to the Customs Authority website, but you have not provided the exact link to find the tariffs. So you need to perhaps provide more specificity here. So this is a task of WTO members to sort of monitor these notifications and see whether the information is applicable. So let's say I go into these members. I think I'm in Brazil. I clicked on the information for Article 1.4. So if you go to Article 1.4 of the TFA, you will see that a member has to provide information on all of these topics, right? So if you wanted to look at fees and charges of Brazil, it's giving you a link to the official Gazette. And you as WTO members have to determine whether this is the appropriate information, if this is relevant information. If you wanted to find import, export, and transit procedures, again, you are led to the Gazette. So you would have to determine whether, this is the information that you that you might need. So let's look at other members that might be interesting. So let's see, Jamaica perhaps. Jamaica has not presented any of these notifications. And if we look at what are their implementation commitments, we can see that their dates for having submitted these notifications have passed. So this is what you would find. So I have in the chat, would you show the information for the EU on single window, of course. So for the EU, I went into the profile and I went on the operation of the single window. So the EU has provided this link for information on the single window. I hope that answers your question. So Article 10.4.3, operation of the single window for the EU. Yeah, I hope that answers. Okay, do we have any more questions so far? Almost done. Now, this was a trick question. Let us look at Uganda. Okay, let's look at Uganda. So what did you find in Uganda regarding transparency notifications? And what we see is that 2 were notified in category A and 2 were notified in category C. Now, those that were notified in category A, Uganda has not submitted any notification to the WTO. And those that were notified in category C, there is still not a definitive date for implementation because, as you recall from the implementation timeline, LDCs have until August of this year to provide definitive implementation dates. So we'll have to see what dates Uganda assigns here. So that is for transparency notifications. So question 10. If you were a member of the private sector and you wish to participate excuse me, in the domestic discussions on trade facilitation, how would you contact the National Trade Facilitation Committee? Let's see, St. Kitts and Nevis has notified 4 articles under transparency, but 1 is not due until 31st December. I think that is a single window. Okay, so just to make it clear, these 4 notifications, they are each associated to, articles, Article 1.4, Article 10.4.3, 10.6.2, and 12.2.2. So as a group, the committee tends to refer to these notifications informally as transparency notifications, but they are not grouped as such in the agreement. They are under different provisions, but it's just like informal type of language that the committee tends to use. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's single window. It's certainly one of the most complicated provisions to implement. So how would you go about contacting? Oh, one question. What happens if you do not submit the extension notification prior to the definitive deadline? Well, I think that would be up for the committee to decide. If you were to submit a notification and you do it after the deadline, I mean, if you request an extension and you do it after the deadline, our experience with the committee, with members, is that they tend not to approve them, right? That is the trend that we have. What would happen if you don't submit a request? That I don't think I'd be able to answer that. Again, I think it'd be up to WTO members to determine what would happen if you don't submit the notification. Are the notifications being sent first to Securitat or is there a platform for submitting directly by members? So normally the process is that you contact Dolores or Maria, or myself, of course, and you can either prepare the notification yourselves and, let Maria and Dolores know, we are submitting this notification. We would appreciate it if you could format it according to WTO documentation. And then Maria and Dolores, they are more on the side of the notification team, which is why I refer to them the most. Then they would look at your notification, check for any, grammar mistakes or anything that might be missing, just to double check that the notification is correct. And they will get back in touch with you and say, hi, we put it in the WTO format, here it is, are you good to go? And it is circulated to WTO members. Of course, or most often, these notifications come through your Geneva missions. So if you're the Ministry of Economy or Agriculture or etc., and you're interested in these notifications, they come through the missions. So I guess domestically, you would have to contact Foreign Affairs or Foreign Trade, whoever is in charge of the mission. So that is basically the process. So before notifying to members, it is first checked with the team in a discussion, and we get back to you as long as we need to until you have a notification that you are happy with. You can also have no idea how to submit the notification, but want to do it. So you can also contact Dolores and Maria and say, I want to do this, I just don't know how to. And we can start from scratch with you, just like Mark said, and do the notification. There is no online platform to submit the notifications as such. Once the notifications are issued officially by the WTO and circulated to members, then they are put into this database. So Maria, again, she's the star of the database, and she puts all of the information in the database. But it's not like a member uploads automatically a notification to the database and then it's public, or to the WTO website, then it's for WTO members to find. It has the procedure of first going through the team, double checking that everything is correctly, then it's officially issued by the WTO, circulated to members, and then it goes to the database. Hope that answers your questions. If it doesn't, let me know.
Yes, thank you very much. This is how it's going previously in trade remedies notifications. But as you know, 2 years ago, WTO Secretariat established a platform specific for trade remedies notification. So it's much easier with a specific format, either take more time for review from Secretariat. And that is why I want to know how it's going with TFA. Thank you very much.
Yes,
sorry,
of course.
Sorry for the mistake. It's Secretariat, but it's type of mistake.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. But you understood, of course. Thank you.
No problem. I understood some kind of filter system, but okay, great.
No, it's Secretariat, but it's type of mistake. Thank you very much.
Okay, no, you're welcome, and thank you for your question. So yeah, other committees have worked in other ways. In the case of the TFA, we're still very much under this other procedure. Question 10, for St. Kitts, the NTFC would be contacted through the ministry of or agency that is the head of the TFA. Okay, which agency would that be? Do you know the person? Do you know their phone number, their email? Would it be that's what you do? And then what does the TFA suggest if any member missed the definitive date? I don't think, and this is my very own personal opinion, this is by no means official, but I would not think that the TFA encourages missing definitive dates, right? I think what the TFA encourages is for you through Article 17 or Article 19, through 4C, right? When you have trouble, and also Now, with the INF1 document, that you have the sufficient tools to sort of foresee if you're not going to be able to implement something, implement a provision by its definitive date. So if members consider that they need more tools, if they need more help, certainly the Secretariat members are you know, at your disposal to make that information available to you. Thank you for the session, very informative, great to be here with you, and I'm glad that it's resonating with some of you, hopefully most of you. In St. Kitts, the ministry in charge of the TFA is the Ministry of International Trade. Great. Again, the question is, if you are someone from the private sector, does that mean, you know, do you call the general phone number of the Ministry of International Trade and ask for the head of the NTFC? Or, you know, because sometimes, you know, some of us or some of you rather, in smaller countries or who are in the TF circles, you know who's doing what, right? And you know who to contact and you know who to call, and that's great. But what happens when you're an SME? You know, you're a small and medium enterprise and you don't know anyone. You're not part of any business association. You're not a big player. You don't know anyone. What do you do? So that's kind of what we're trying to answer here. So let me try and do that. This was a bit of a trick question because the answer was not directly in the TFA database website. And I know I said that all answers would be here. I lied, I'm sorry. But if you go to the facility website, which is what Mark pointed us towards today, if you go to contact and partners and you were to hit on contact points, for example, for those members that have provided that information, you would find here the contacts. Let's see, Mauritius. Let's see if we can find anything for them. If you wanted to contact the coordinator of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, you have a name, you have a position, you have a telephone, you have an email, you know who. So if you're a small trader, if you're no one in your business community, if you're small, if you're new, if you just don't know, there are resources at your disposal to find who to talk to, right? So you would have here a much specialized list, let's say so. And we have different contacts. So for Mauritius, we also have the government official responsible of coordinating with donors. So let's say that you're in the donor community, you want to assist Mauritius, and you have certain programs that you think might be of their interest, then this is the person, you know, on the flip side, like who do you offer assistance to? So this is the person in Mauritius, and this is their Geneva delegate. So if you're concerned, let's say how we were discussing about a notification, you may want to contact the Geneva delegate and see what's going on with a certain notification. So I think the facility does a wonderful job of putting at your disposal the context, and these have been notified to the WTO, to the facility, and you can check to see if the WTO member that you represent has provided contact details, if they are correct. If they are not correct, please feel free to contact Mark or any of us and update them. We 100% depend on you. So isn't question 10 addressing contact information of the inquiry points? It is not as detailed as on the TFA facility. So, okay, the inquiry points are different to who would you contact in your National Trade Facilitation Committee. The inquiry points are established to answer questions regarding more technical issues of the import, export, and transit procedure. Let's say you want to know a tariff, you want to know a rule of origin or something like this, then you contact the inquiry point. But that's why I sort of frame this other question, question 10, as what if you are someone from the private sector and you have something to say about trade facilitation? You want to know when your country will implement X provision because you think it will benefit you, or you want to be a part of the consultation process of TF reform in your country, then who would you contact then? But I understand the confusion. I mean, do you remember that one of the things that we talked to is coordination is key, and there are so many people to talk to that you can certainly get confused between who do you contact if you want assistance? Who do you contact if you want to offer assistance? Who do you contact if you want to reach the National Trade Facilitation Committee? And who would you contact as the inquiry point? So, and these might all be the same person, but you know, they are there for different purposes on the TFA, and the confusion is certainly understandable. So let me show you on the inquiry points. Let me go back to the database and say that you want to find an inquiry point. There are several ways to do this. So if you know the WTO member whose inquiry point you're looking for, go to WTO member. They might have notified an inquiry point contact, or they might not have, according to their commitments. But another way, let me see if we can find it here. I'm under notification on transparency notifications. I think this might not be a good way. So let's go to WTO members and let's see if we can find the inquiry point, let's say for Hong Kong, China. So for Hong Kong, China, let's say that you wanted to find their inquiry point. It's notified under Article 1.4, and you would find here, you know, not one, but several, depending on the type of question that you might have. So you have several options, let's say with Hong Kong, China. If you wanted to contact, I don't know, in Singapore, same way, you go to their profile, you go to their inquiry points information, and you would find for Singapore who you would contact. And again, it's up to members to determine whether the information that other members have notified is relevant. If you find that the notification does not provide you with the information that you need, that the person is no longer in that post, that the link doesn't lead you anywhere, it's up to WTO members to keep these notifications alive and say, look, this needs a little updating, or, you know, engage with that other WTO member and see what can be done. Is there a procedure to update the contact information? Yes, certainly. Basically, it's a revision to the Article 1.4 notification. In the case of the inquiry points, if you want to update the contact information in the TFAF website, my suggestion would be to contact Mark directly, because that's, let's say, outside the scope of the TFA requirements for notification. I don't know if that answered your questions. If it doesn't, let me know and I can go more into that. Where did you find the tab with the contact partners? So that would be in the facility website. I'm in the Trade Facilitation Agreement facility, and I went to contact, and I went to contact points. So this is outside the database. Question 1, does the Committee of TFA have guidance on recommendation on what kind of document copy should be accepted, or usually what kind of document copy could be accepted? So far, no. I don't think that, I mean, the committee does not have any guidance on this. We only have the provisions of the TFA, which, you know, speak about the acceptance of copies, but the committee has no guidance on this so far. Question 2, are there any multilateral or plurilateral authorized economic operators, MRA? Mutual recognition agreements in the world? That I have no idea. I'll be honest with you. I think that our colleagues from the World Customs Organization would be best placed to answer this. But if you'd like, you have my email, please feel free to write and I can look into this with a bit more detail. How do I go about updating the information on inquiry points? So again, on inquiry points, that information is required under Article 1.4 of the TFA. So if you have already notified, you would issue a revision of that notification with the new contact point. And the procedure would be, again, if you're a domestic authority, go to the mission or the authority that deals with the mission, and then you get in touch with us about updating your notification or submitting a revision to that notification. And we would discuss with you, the formatting, and you give us the information, and then we circulate it to WTO members. That's on inquiry points. Remember that those are different than the contact points that I have on screen at the moment. Okay. On question 10, because I see we're a bit close to the end of the session, I just wanted to make the point that sometimes it's not even people from the private sector who need this information. Sometimes within ministries or within the same government, you don't know who deals with what. And that's, that sometimes happens. It's okay. So, there are a lot of stakeholders that might need information on the NTFC. If you have any ideas of who else might need this information, I would welcome that on the chat. And yes, you are so right, Bangladesh. Thank you so much. The revised Kyoto Convention deals with the authorized economic operator. See, that's great. The WCO colleagues would know more on that front. I'd be happy to put you in touch if you're interested. Last question. Has your WTO member, country, region, etc., shared any experience on the implementation of the TFA with the committee? Do you think that there are relevant projects that could be shared? And are you interested in hearing other members' experience in implementing a particular article of the TFA? So, there is a section of the agenda of a trade facilitation committee that is called experience sharing. Basically, this is the opportunity for members to share on a voluntary basis, of course, how their implementation with the TFA is going. It's undertaken in informal mode, which means that there are no minutes of the meeting that are being recorded, but members are free to make presentations and exchange how it's going with them. So, for example, if I don't know, let's say Ecuador. If you're looking at a WTO member, here in the profile again, you would see that they have made 4 experience sharing presentations. So Ecuador has thought that, their experience on publication, on NTFCs, and generally on the implementation was worthy of sharing with the committee. And if you click on the link, you have access, I think you won't be able to see it, but it would be a PowerPoint presentation that was made. So here, for example, on their implementation experience, it's in Spanish, but there is some information of what Ecuador said at that time. So let's say that you're interested in experience from national trade facilitation committees. You may access what Ecuador shared. And if you're interested, you might liaise with them and say, look, I'd like to know a little more about this, right? Or if perhaps in your country or region or customs territory that you represent, maybe there are some good things happening in TF that you want to share with the world, and you think it'd be a good idea to share with the committee. Now this is the opportunity. Also on the flip side, one way to use this that we have heard from members is, I want someone to share the experience of how they have implemented second testing according to Article 5. I don't know how to do that. Can someone share their experience? And indeed, members have stepped up and said, according to what was requested by X member at the last meeting, we want to share our experience with, implementing second testing according to Article 5. So this is a good place and time to discuss implementation issues. So if you have something that you think is worthy of sharing, do it. This is it. Get in touch with Dolores, who is the acting secretary of the committee. Let her know that you want to share something and we can add you to the agenda. And if there's something that you want to know about, one way also, if you go to the tab TF committee and you go to experience sharing, you can look at the experience sharing that has been done by topic. So for example, on COVID-19, what have members shared on COVID-19? What have members shared on single window, for example? And you may find resources here, or you may want to contact that member bilaterally for further experience or for further information. But there's a good resource here. And I have a question. Is it possible to search the implementing experience by article? Certainly. So wait, yes, by article. This is here by article. 7.7, 10.4, 11.3. So you can do it by article. St. Kitts has not shared any experience, or must I say I have not found? Yeah, perhaps St. Kitts has not shared any experience. Perhaps it would be good that you did, and I'm certain WTO members would be eager to hear from you. Also, based on your question, Paola, I think you might find this interesting. On the facility website, I think that they have it, our agreement and article resources. You can find resources per article. So you have article, you have general guidelines, case studies, summary notes, legal text per article. So this is in the facility website. So you can find information here, and you can find the information sharing by article on the database. So last 8 minutes. Is there anything that you would like to share in your experience sharing of the committee, or anything you'd like to hear from members in the experience sharing? Well, I guess this is, thank you, really very informative session. No, thank you for not letting me speak too much and sharing your experiences. Thank you for pointing out certain things in the database that I have taken note of. Please do feel free to contact Dolores, Mark, myself. We're always happy to hear from you and eager to help you out in whatever needs you might have. Any questions generally from the TFA that you'd like to address before we conclude? Do you think implementation of the TFA would reduce trade costs considerably? Is there any estimated rate concerning this matter? Yes, so the WTO World Trade Report of 2015 made an assessment, made a forecast of how much trade costs would be reduced through implementation of the TFA. And what I can tell you now is that members are 5 years after the implementation, eager to know whether those projections, stand the test of time or not. So we'll see. It's scheduled that we will perhaps received a first draft of a new report in 2023. So keep your ears and eyes open for that. So let me see if I have something more. Would love to hear about the use of disruptive technologies. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that outside of the committee, there has been, many fora dedicating to this, but inside at the core of the committee, I think that there's still an interest in just basic TFA implementation, but I'm pretty sure that, like you, many other members would be interested in hearing from this. And if it's something that your Geneva mission would like to bring to the committee, I'm sure that there would be interest for it. I have a question. Will a tab like the T5 contact points be added to the database? Not at the time that I can think of, because I think that the intention is to draw a line in the sense that the TFA database website contains information that comes from notifications, like official WTO notifications. Contact points for NTFCs, etc., are not mandated through the TFA. So that's why the facility collects them and publishes them on their website. I think that they are both useful, but if you find it even more useful that they'd be in a one single website, I take your point and I will relay that information. No, thanks to you, everyone, for making this session very live. I'm very happy that you liked it. So great, awesome. I'm very happy to read you. Thank you so much. Thank you. No, thank you, guys. I have nothing but appreciation for you. Thank you for not letting me or letting me bore you for 2 hours and 4 hours in total this week. But I'm glad you got something out of it. Oh, so there's a question. Will we be getting a copy of the legal texts? So that would be, I guess, for our ITTC colleagues. And other than that, my thanks, my appreciation. It's been a joy and a pleasure to be with you. And that's it for me. Thank you. I leave it to you, Alicia.
Thank you very much, Helen. Indeed, let me add to those accolades for very highly interactive and informative session. Thanks very much. It was a difficult task to work with a live website that did not crash and even switch to the facility. So I suppose it goes a long way to say how well this website is operating. It didn't crash on us at all, and you were able to open all pages. So thanks very much again, Helen, and to the entire team, Mark and Dolores, for the whole week for the sessions on Tuesday and today. I just wanted to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. So once we have the recording, and it takes a while, actually quite a while, to convert it into a video, we will be sending you the link with the video recording of this session. So if there's anything that you want to rehash, to have a look at the website pages or what the explanations were that Helen provided, or the questions asked, then Helen explained them through looking at the pages. You will be able to look at it again. And with that email, when we send you the website link, we will also send you the evaluation for this week, module 2, as this session concludes our week 2. So thanks very much for being with us for this trade facilitation agreement session, the first 5 years. Now, let me just say a few words about the week 3, and that will be on services trade in times of COVID, session focusing on developments and policy challenges. And in fact, this module 3 next week will unfold in 3 segments. We will be meeting with you live on Tuesday, 1 March, and Thursday, 3rd March, and Friday, 4th March. On March 1 and 3, there will be identical sessions to cater to participants from different time zones. So we will have a session in the morning starting at 9:30 and in the afternoon starting at 15 hours, and that's Geneva time. The sessions will be 1 hour long and will be identical. So on Tuesday and Thursday, you can choose which session you wish to participate. Tuesday covering certain topics, and then on Thursday there will be a recap and Q&A session also in the morning and the afternoon session. Now, let me note something regarding Friday. There will be a roundtable discussion, and we have slightly adjusted the time, starting time for that session. There will be only one session starting at 13:30. That's 1:30 p.m. Geneva time. And we've allotted 1 hour and a half for this session. It will be moderated by Ms. Xiaolin Chai, Director of the Trade and Services and Investment Division. And there will be 3 panelists, Hamid Mamdou, Sumanta Chaudhuri, and Stuart Harbison, who will be panelists in this session. So please adjust your calendars because initially we have told you that the session would start at 2 p.m. Geneva time, but we have now changed the time, and the starting time will be 13:30 or 1:30 p.m. Geneva time. So I think that sort of covers our program for Module 3 next week. We will be seeing each other live on Tuesday. I just wanted also to thank everyone who've sent the evaluation for Module 1 and remind anyone who has forgotten to do it yet that we would very much appreciate your feedback for week 1. We've sent you earlier this week the evaluation for week 1. And all of you received an email regarding the week 3. And we've also mentioned that there is some training materials that have been posted in the Google Drive for the services module. So you may want to look into the Google Drive, but none of this material is mandatory before Tuesday for next week's sessions. Now, I think there was a question, there was going to be a general question. There was a question regarding you will be getting the legal text. I suppose you probably thought about the hard copy. No, you won't be. You will not be getting the hard copy of the legal text. In fact, the full set of our legal text, the agreements, are available on our website. So if you go on the WTO website, you will be able to find the documentation, including the legal texts, on our website. I think it was Julian who had a question, general question, not related to TFA. If that was related to the legal text, then I suppose I covered it. If there is anybody who has any other question, either regarding the upcoming module, any clarification, or anything else related to the course, you would have a chance to ask us live now. Otherwise, you can also contact us through our Geneva courses at WTO.org mailbox, email address, if you have any question of a general nature. I don't see anybody requesting the floor, so that means that looks like everything has been clear. I would like to then thank you very much for being with us for Module 2. And I invite you to be with us again next week for Module 3 on services trade. And I wish you all a wonderful, good weekend, upcoming weekend, and see you again next week on 1 March for services trade. All the best, enjoy the weekend, and see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.